Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. I'm really fortunate to be sitting here with my friend Todd Merriott. Todd is a industry veteran. He's been around for many, many years. He's the co-owner and CEO of the Kansas City-based company Crown City Homes, which specializes in property consultations, creative home selling options, including paying all cash for houses. He also is the CEO and co-founder of a painting company called Unique Painting and another really cool company called Stone Mountain Security Solutions. Uh, Todd, I don't know how you handle all of these companies, but there's some synergies there, right? Like real estate, painting, right? Vertically integrating, real estate security, right? There's a security element in real estate. Uh, Man, how did you just come upon all these companies? It seems like you started off way back when doing teaching and then evolved into the entrepreneurial side.
Yeah. Well, the story about how we got the three companies, I mean, they kind of fell, not, I wouldn't say fell in our lap. We sought out a painting business. We were looking to acquire a service-based company that we could treat kind of like rental properties where it would bring cash flow. We were looking for something that was, very specifically already in place, had a good system, had good people. And so we wanted to just take that over. And we did search for quite a while and found a good fit, made an offer and got a really good situation on that. I'll come back to that, the numbers on it, because that's fun to talk about too. But, in terms of my journey, like you said, I played baseball in college, loved coaching, loved baseball, kind of wanted to go into the coaching world. Decided to not pursue professional career on that, got injured, messed my back up pretty bad. So it really wasn't an option for me. And I just thought I wanted to stay in baseball. So teaching seemed like sort of the best path to go. I was already married, so the college route, that's a drag because you get kind of, moved all over the country and, you start small and have to work your way up. So I went straight into teaching. I actually got my degree in unified science. So I was certified in chemistry, biology, and physics. Uh,
Nice.
I ended up in that just because I liked animals. I was interested in the sort of the earth science stuff and didn't really get much good advice at that time and found my way into teaching high school because I wanted to coach. About 2 weeks into teaching, I knew I did not want to do this. Um, had to stick out the year just because of the contract. Got to coach. I was a varsity baseball coach at 23 of a pretty good sized program. It was a lot of fun. We did have some success, and they were disappointed, to have to change again. But I just knew I couldn't teach, and it
Mhm.
wasn't the job of teaching. It was just that idea that no matter what I did, I was on a set pay scale, and it was only driven by the amount of time that I committed to it, and then some education. You could kind of move up on the scale. And for me, that just was not. I don't know. My mind moved too fast. I just couldn't sit there and do that. And I didn't want to commit to being the best teacher I could be. It just wasn't something I wanted to do. And so I just quit after that baseball season, after that school year, and decided I'll figure something out. Well, in the meantime, my brother-in-law was like, "Hey, I got a house to paint. You want to help me?" Sure, why not? So I went and helped him paint a house. Got paid pretty well for it. At the end of the day, knew what I had done, felt like I had accomplished something, could see the results of the work, and I could tell that the harder I worked, the more I could make. And I thought, when people would ask me what I was doing, I just kind of lied to them, like, "Well, I'm painting houses." And next thing you know, they're like, "Well, come give me a bid." So I had 4 or 5 jobs lined up, decided to just turn it into a business. Didn't even know that much about painting, but figured it out, got pretty good at it, started adding a couple people to my team, and then painted for a few years, but we kept watching the remodelers and the work that they were doing with their hands and building stuff and doing some really cool things. And we were always coming in and painting them, but I just thought, I feel like we could learn a whole lot more. We're skilled enough. Let's do this. So we started really watching the remodelers and then taking small jobs to learn how to remodel. All that to say, I kind of grew from that just accidentally painting a house into doing pretty high-end remodels on, $1 million homes and that kind of thing. And then decided that, homeowners are a little bit tough to deal with. And I got an opportunity to go work for a commercial construction company selling projects and managing projects, which I knew how to do. And so then I learned a ton about commercial construction. So by then, now I'm, 20 years in, to the 15 years in on the construction trades, and had a pretty well-rounded background and understanding of both residential, commercial, low end, high end, industrial, all that kind of stuff. And I actually, shoot, back in the, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s, I saw a Carlton Sheets How to Buy Real Estate with No Money Down infomercial,
Yep. I had the same one.
and I bought it. And so I just kind of started dabbling in it, and never didn't really jump in with both feet, but because I at the time, I just, my mentors, my parents, they're pretty straightforward about life, and they enjoyed their jobs and the security and that kind of thing. Didn't quite understand the idea of entrepreneurship, and they were a little nervous for me, but I just knew that was the route I wanted to go. But I never quite had that, like, courage, I guess, to just really step out and do it. So I was just kind of dabbling in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up working with another kind of, actually a pretty big player in the industry. His name's Mark Delatorre. He's at SBD Housing in Kansas City, and he and I were friends. And he just said, "Well, why don't you come help me and just learn?" And so we did that. Ended up moving to Florida. Tried to set up an SBD Florida where we were buying houses at the courthouse steps. Did some deals, did some flips, learned a ton down there. Got my real estate license, and then came back to Kansas City at a good time and helped Mark build his team. And then honestly, his ambitions kind of outgrew my own, and it was just kind of a good time for me to go do my own thing. Um, and so I teamed up with Ben, and we just kind of started like, all right, we committed to each other. We're married, and so now we're just going to go do this thing and figure it out. And have gone through several business ideas, ended up getting really into buying houses back in 2020, 2019, 2020. Yeah, 2020, because it was COVID. And we've been buying, 50 to 60 contracts a year since then. And so that's how we got the home buying operation started. And we just kind of look, rentals are fine. We've got some rentals. We've got a portfolio now of 10 or 11 houses, and they're fine. But we also saw that cash flow, you can get cash flow other ways. And that's when we started looking at the service-based industry, and trying to acquire. And we'd kind of heard, that whole concept of, there's a lot of baby boomers who are getting ready to retire.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for, how do they exit their service company? And that's what we did. We looked for a guy who was ready to shut it down and just needed to take care of his people, wanted to make sure they had a place to work, and sort of hand off the system.
Love it. So you and Ben have been together now for a while. Was Ben with you at the other business too before?
Briefly, yeah, he was
Yeah.
actually brought in to replace me. I was being groomed to do a different role, and one that I really didn't want.
Mm.
But so I was kind of reluctantly agreeing to train Ben to become the acquisition guy. I was going to move into dispositions, and I was kind of ho hum about that. But I really didn't have any great ideas for what else to do or where to go. So I was like, okay, we just ended up in the car every day for like 6 months, and realized that our interests kind of aligned better together than working for somebody else. Um, that was a little bit of a difficult time for everybody, because Mark's a good friend of ours, and we didn't want to let him down. At the same time, we knew we needed to go, and so it kind of made that an awkward situation for a few years. Luckily, he's been very gracious, and we've kind of reconnected here recently, and we owe him a lot. He taught us a ton, and we don't really compete with them. They're in our market, but they buy completely different ways. So it's nice because
Mm.
we actually can feed them deals, and we can talk to them, and if they need help on something, we can help. And so that's been really good.
That is great. There's a lot of people out there that hold grudges, and pretty soon they don't even know why they hold them anymore. They just know that, there's something back there why they should hate them, right? Because their ego gets in the way.
It's difficult. Business, everybody says, oh, it's not personal, it's business. It's always personal.
Yeah.
You pour yourself into these companies and you get to know people and you're on a team together, and it's when somebody decides to leave, it is personal, and it's hard not to, it's really difficult to turn the page and still be like, friendly with people. And sometimes you just need some time to kind of
Oh
get
yeah.
over it, get past it, and realize hopefully that they're not trying to hurt you. And I think that was one of the things we did when we left. I said, we're not going to compete with them and we're not going to go after their people.
Yeah.
And so we did that. We never called a single one of their investors or customers or anybody. Um,
Hmm.
we did take a few employees as they quit. We didn't pick them off, but when we heard that they left, it was like, hey, go call them. We know them, and we brought some people on. But we never stole anybody or from them, or we really respected what he had done and what he had taught us, and so we decided that we were going to try to be as honorable as we could with that situation.
Yeah, I think that goes a long way, because this is, as big as this industry is, it's very small, right?
Yeah,
It seems like everybody kind of knows somebody else. Like, even if you don't have a direct connection with somebody, somebody who knows them. And if someone feels like they were done wrong, like, they'll talk. They'll
oh
talk
for
about it.
sure.
And then the
Yeah,
word gets around, and that can affect business, whether directly or indirectly. Um, so that, I think that's a really valuable lesson. I mean, one of the ways that I got burnt the most, and anytime somebody asks me, what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned through your journey, I always go back to when a business partner really burnt me and stole some money from me. And I knew it was my fault because I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't
yep,
dig deep enough. I felt like, oh yeah, like this is a good person. And at the beginning, everybody puts on their best face because it's like dating.
yeah,
And you're like, oh yeah, you shower every day, you make sure you go get a haircut before the date, and you're always watching what you say and how you say it, because you want to put your best foot forward. But then at some point, everybody starts to relax. And I took people at face value, and I got burnt hard. Like, I had six-figure losses.
yeah.
And so it's hard because it's a people business. Like, you can't do this thing on your own, right?
Right.
And luckily you found Ben. And for those who are listening, his name is Ben Algeyer. He's also one of the co-owners of Crown City Homes, which, great guy too. That's how we met.
Yeah.
Um, so you're fortunate enough to found a good partner in this
Hmm.
journey. And I think that's gonna go a long way.
It does. And I think one of the in looking for a partner, like we don't have the same skills. And that's so and another way to say that is we have a lot of differences. That's okay.
Well,
Um,
another word for that is complementary, right?
yeah, exactly. I think that we have a pretty mature approach to our differences, and do try to complement each other, and what he's good at and gifted at and loves to do is not necessarily the same things. We have some overlap, but they're not necessarily the same things that I love to do and I'm good at.
Hmm.
And so it enables us to like freely let, he takes care of a bunch of stuff that I don't, and vice versa. And there's some things that people will ask me, oh, how do you guys do, what's your best lead source? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. Ask Ben. Like I just
Yeah.
have to let him, that's his thing. And he knows if you ask him, he'll know it exactly. And on the flip side, if it's like, well, what's been your revenue for the last 2 months? He would have no idea. But I know all that, so we just kind of take care of it. We do report to those things to each other. So we keep, the information's freely shared. But from a day-to-day basis, I don't have to deal with some of those details because it's a lot. Like you said, I mean, there's a lot going on here. It's very hard to do on your own. You have to involve people.
Hmm. Yeah, at different levels too, right? Like, you guys see each other, pretty equally, right? You're the
Hmm.
CEO. You probably make the final decision if there's a disagreement, but you're going to talk it out. And then, you got to bring other people in to do, the daily tasks and all of put your hands in the dirt kind of work, right? So do you have any good tips on like, finding team members, whether it's a business partner or people to work for you?
Yeah. Um, I I think the business partner part, I don't know if I have any good tips for that. I think that's just more of like I think it definitely helped that we spent so much time together, like 6 months daily in the car all day, going and learning acquisitions or training on acquisitions. We actually, we kind of packed in a lot of experience together in a short amount of time. Well, 6 months isn't that short, but I think most people, they kind of like partner with somebody they were sitting around having a cocktail with, and they come up with an idea, and it's like, let's partner on this. Well, I mean, that may work, but you may not know everything you need to know in that short amount of time. Or have a confidence in the fact that you're going to get along, or just sometimes just those chance meetings don't necessarily mean this is a good idea for a partnership. I see
Yeah.
that all the time. I mean, we've done it still. We have done it. I mean, we've made that mistake even, in the last few years where we've partnered with people kind of on an idea and on a belief rather than in confidence and understanding of who they are. So I think from a partner standpoint, I would go slower in terms of, um, you know, permanently partnering with somebody that you don't know very well. I think it's okay to have more of a joint venture attitude towards like, individual projects. Like, hey, let's team up on this project and see how it goes.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can do it 50-50 or however you want to split it and just be like, let's team up on this one and then we'll talk about the next one. Um,
Hmm.
when it comes to employees, we've really implemented one predictive index has been helpful a lot, to help us understand who we're hiring, how they like to be managed, and sort of adapting our management style to what works for them. Because at the end of the day, we're looking for a win, right? And the win is a happy associate who's doing good work. And so um, that predictive index kind of helps you to understand how you're going to adapt to those people. I don't necessarily, we do have standards and we expect people to meet our standards, but we believe there are sometimes multiple ways to get to a standard. You don't have to necessarily take the same path to it. So it's okay to let them be who they are as long as they understand the goal and where we're headed. Um, and honestly, we work, we just, when we put out a job posting on Indeed or whatever, um, we have a pretty good process, I think, for getting to meet people through that. So we'll do some phone interviews or Zoom, like a Zoom call interview. And I think you can kind of determine a lot about a person just in the way they approach that Zoom call. Um, we recently did this office manager one, and we had 3 or 4 people, I think it was 4 that we did the phone interviews with. And it was really interesting to see how each of them approached it. Like one person um, was very, dressed up and had a really well lit room, and you could tell they were very prepared, and everything was quiet, and that went really well. It was a great conversation. After we thought about it, we realized that it wasn't a great fit, but in the conversation, it felt like a good fit just because of the way they approached the interview. Um, the next one we met with was in her car in a park, and at one point she was even driving
Hmm.
on the Zoom call. Um, and so, like for me, that was very one distracting, two borderline insulting, kind of like this isn't that important. I tried to see past it, but just like looking for the good in that situation. She did end up making it to round two because she was very qualified, but I couldn't get it out of my mind just the way that she treated the opportunity. Um, Interestingly enough, as it played out, that person became very like pushy and belligerent and strange, kind of like it, we didn't make them an offer, but they showed their true colors, and it was like we really kind of knew just off the bat the way that first interview went. So we do that first round just to kind of see how they approach it, and then if they make it through to the second round, it's in person and they come in. And again, we're kind of want to see, we don't give them any parameters like you should wear this, dress up or not dress up. We kind of want to see just how they approach it. And then that personal interview is much more, I guess, intensive. And so we do get a lot out of that. But I think our process for that has definitely improved. It wasn't that good 3 years ago, and
Mm.
now we do feel much better about it.
Is that something that you just developed over time, or did you go through any like hiring training or executive training to get to that point?
Well, I think that was maybe one of the benefits of being at Investor Fuel. Honestly, that group of people, it didn't take long for to kind of get like a consensus. If you averaged all those companies, that's about what they all do. Something like that, where there's multiple rounds. And so we just kind of like took notes, talked to several people we respect, and decided, okay, this is a reasonable process. There's some people that have some really cool, kind of crazy, like difficult interview um, policies, and like they put people through some projects, and um, I don't know. We may grow to that, but right now, I felt a little bit like an imposter trying to act like somebody needs to go through all that to work for us. So, maybe someday I'll feel like a big enough guy to make people jump through hoops. But right now, we were pretty comfortable with our 3 round process.
How long did that take, the 3 rounds?
Total from the time we posted it, less than 30 days to hire.
That's pretty good, especially if you have a need there too. Like if you really needed somebody, some might feel like they have to rush it, right? Like we just need to get somebody in here, but that could lead to hiring the wrong person. But 30 days, I think, is a good timeline to work through those stages.
We were fairly intentional with that. Actually, we did not hurry our responses. And in fact, the phone interviews were not all in one day. So we told everybody, hey, listen, we're going through these interviews. We will get back to you within the next week or two. Don't be concerned if you don't hear from us in a couple weeks. Um, and so we were just very like deliberate, I think, with that for that reason. Just sleep on it for a couple days, at least have a weekend, go through between rounds or between interviews, and um, we talked about it a lot, and just kind of felt like once we made the decision, it was like this is the right person, we think. So
Hmm. Did you go the contractor or employee route?
we did employee that, and that was we were not hung up on that. It was more driven by the person we were hiring, what they were looking for,
Hmm.
and because we felt like it was the right fit, we went W-2 and with some benefits and things like that. More because that was just based on what we needed to do to get that right person.
Yeah, likely we're looking for benefits and a little bit more security.
Yep.
And you're going to get that from people who have families a lot, right? They're not as willing to put the risk in there where they're going to handle their own taxes and their own benefits, and they might make a little bit more.
Hmm.
But that security is a big factor for a lot of people.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. Um, so you've got your office manager, she's in there now, and she's getting kind of onboarded. What's that onboarding process like for you?
Well, we're small enough that right now, I mean, it's really just me and Ben who, like, on individual tasks, anything that we want to teach, um, you know, like I'm just kind of giving out small tasks here and here, take this, do this. And then the easy ones, it's like, okay, done. That was easy, right? And so I'm just kind of working through like what her pace of work is, style of work, approach to it, how quickly are we getting these things done? And then if there's something that's a challenge, it's like usually it's just because they don't know how to use a system or haven't seen this before or whatever. So that's when I'll sit down and just kind of go through it. Luckily, in up till now, my wife had been doing some of the tasks that we have with like bill pay and stuff like that. She filled in because we parted ways with our previous bill pay person, so she did that for a couple months, and so she's been good about offering to chip in and help train the next person. There's some incentive for her. She's ready to be done doing it, so she's happy to help train the new person, just so she can stop having to do the work.
Nice. So You have three main companies. Is the majority of what you're working on through Crown City Homes, or are these other companies growing to a point now where there's more revenue coming from those other opportunities?
I would say the bulk of the complicated work is on the home buying operation. And I think in general that, buying houses is a complicated venture. It's not
Yeah.
straightforward and simple. Um, from a revenue standpoint, it brings in the most and it's the most complicated. So probably 60% of my time is committed to that, 50 to 60. And then the painting business is fairly straightforward and fairly simple. Um, but you're relying on a lot of other outside factors. So you have to keep your eye on everything because your marketing chains have to be in place, your lead flow has to be good, your sales process has to be strong, and then you're having to sell a lot of widgets. Your paint job, these are on average 2, maybe 3 day paint jobs.
Hmm.
And so you've got a lot of customers, a lot of follow-up, invoicing, um, you know, payroll, all these things that are constantly moving. There's a lot of parts and you got people all over town. So you need really good management on that. People who understand how to run that. And we do have a really good project manager in the field, and we have a good salesman getting deals. And so now it's just a matter of managing that crew and managing the expectations of homeowners, which is not that's actually fairly difficult.
The one that is interesting to me, I mean, we're both in the real estate field, but when I was there actually for I didn't tell we didn't say this before, but you actually invited me to come out and spend some time with your team out in Kansas City for a while at
Yeah.
the beginning of the year. And that was really enlightening. And thank you again for giving me that opportunity. It was cool to hang out with you guys and learn some
Yeah, it was
things
great.
and spend some time with some people out in the field, knocking on doors and just doing the things. It was cool to kind of do that stuff again. I did a lot back in like the 2000s. And so, I was, looking at opening up my own operation here in Colorado, at least a little bit more intentionally, not just kind of stumbling upon deals here and there, which is what I'd been doing, a lot of
Hmm.
referrals and that sort of thing. But it was cool to spend time with the team. But I got to talk with one of the guys in the office who was basically running the security business, and it's really interesting because I think about like security systems, which I think it involves, but like there's even things like weapon detection systems. Like, what is the security business about?
So this is one of those partnerships that kind of came about more from an idea. This one's gone well, and so it's kind of the exception to the rule of quick partnerships don't go well. But this is one that's going well. But yeah, we were sitting around with a buddy, and he had been an agent with DHS, Division of Homeland Security. So a federal agent, which was it's kind of like a police and he situation. And he had been in Afghanistan military, had been disabled, is disabled veteran status, and was wanting to put his knowledge and background in military and police into the private sector of security. And we were kind of trying to figure out like how does he transition? And one of his roles previously was to do assessments for government buildings in the region where he would do like they'd call it a vulnerability or a risk assessment. And he would look at the entire facility from parking lot in all the way to their like cybersecurity scenario. So he would look at parking lot lighting and landscaping and ballistic film on glass and entry and your access points going into the building. Obviously, security cameras, alarms, fire and smoke, all these things that go into making a building safe and secure. He would look at their fire plan or their emergency plan or active shooter plan and put together an entire portfolio, playbook, I guess you'd call it, for what their building needed or was good at, and then what they needed to supplement. Um, so we kind of thought that was going to be the way we were going to go, that we were going to sell assessments. He was pretty fast at them, so it doesn't take a lot of labor, and he could put them together fairly quick. And there is a market for those, and we could make a profit. And so he invited us to help him run that business because he's like, look, I'm a good operator. I know what I'm doing, but I don't know how to run a business, and you guys do. Maybe you can help me on the back end, and I'll go out and build this on the front end. And we were like, well, why not? It really wasn't a lot of investment up front, cash wise or anything. It was more of a time thing. And we knew that we were smart enough to learn what we needed to about the security world to be able to help sell it and network and make connections. And then in that first 6 months or so, our partner Thad, he started making connections with some technology companies that were already out there. And probably the biggest one we've made is with a company called Zero Eyes. And they are an AI-based weapons detection software that goes on your existing cameras. And
Mhm.
that software can pick up a brandished weapon and alert whoever's on the team. So if you can imagine, like at a school, if you had Zero Eyes on the cameras in the parking lot, and it picked up on someone who was getting out of their vehicle and starting to put together a weapon, it would instantly notify a dispatcher who would look at it, human verify it, and then send it on to the administration and the local police. So within about 10 seconds, local police and administration are getting alerts, email, text, app alerts, everything saying you have a brandished weapon on your property. And what the statistics show is that I think it's, well, it probably has varied a little bit, but at the time it was about 86% of active shooters spend between 6 and 7 minutes in the parking lot, essentially preparing for the act.
Mhm.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Most of the damage that gets done happens in the first minute once they're in the school. So if you've got 6 or 7 minutes advance notice from the parking lot, administration can sometimes they can push a button and lock down the facility. The resource officer can be notified and try to, at least get eyes on where the person is. Local police are notified; they've got people on the way. And if you've got the building locked down and you've got students inside, staff inside, but this person outside, and they've got their access points handled correctly, meaning their entry is locked down, they've got ballistic film on the glass. Now you've got a situation where it's really difficult for that person to do the damage they intended to do. Is it going to save everybody? We don't know, but it could do a lot to save a lot of people because a lot of times those people go in expecting to just do a lot of damage quick, and we're trying to just minimize the opportunity. And it's not a catch-all; it's not a save everything situation, but it is a massive advantage now for law enforcement and administration to protect the students and staff.
Oh my God. It's amazing that
Yeah.
that technology even exists, number one. And it's out there, it's deployed, right? So there's schools that use it, you know, companies that use it, right?
Yeah. It's currently on about 45,000 lenses nationwide. A lens is just a camera. Um, they have multiple examples of active people who have brandished a weapon in a public setting where like uh, police were able to intervene and no damage was done. So it definitely works. It's the kind of thing that you might not always know exactly how well it's working. The more people find out that technology is out there, the more it may shift the strategies of people to where they're not trying to do these things. If they think that there's a chance that that's going to happen, they're going to get caught quicker. I think that's part of the goal
Mm.
is, some of the detractors like, well, it can't pick up a small gun if they're hiding it in their backpack. That's true. But I think we'd all rather, if someone's going to try to go do that, a small gun in a backpack is going to do a lot less damage and it take a lot longer to do it than say like an AR-15 where it's just, rapid fire, large caliber, big damage, that's we're trying to avoid the worst of it and shift those strategies to things that just do a lot less damage. That would be a win for everybody.
Yeah, it's just risk mitigation. Like for someone who would say, oh, you call them detractors, that, this is not worth the investment in the technology. It's like, well, no, it's like you do where you can. Like you try to like lower the overall risk and increase the safety for the people that are on that campus. Um, and so it's like, well, don't do anything because this one thing isn't 100%. Like that's some people's mentality, and it just doesn't make
Exactly.
sense.
Yep. And we run into it a lot. We have lobbyists. Our partners have lobbyists. They're working with the legislature of the states, trying to get the legislature to write the requirements to sort of match the capabilities of our partners. And some people don't love that. They want open competition. The reality is, we've partnered with the Cadillac of this technology. It's the only one that actually works well. There's some other people trying to do some similar technology, but they just haven't gotten it to work as well. And in fact, our partner is the only DHS Safety Act certified provider of the
Hmm.
weapons detection software. And so, in our opinion, having the legislation require that DHS Safety Act certification, while currently it positions our partner to be the only one that can get the work, it will drive the competitors to also go get that certification. So overall, it will improve the technology across the landscape and improve our ability to protect students and staff. And yes, this is a business. We do want to compete for business and earn it. But at the end of the day, the mission of that company is to protect people and make it safer for students and staff. And it's not just schools. They're in, um, a couple of NFL stadiums. They're in some MLB stadiums. I mean, you can imagine any large facility where you've got a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
uh, this would be one of those things where it can help, and that's the goal, is to get that to move forward. And so right now we're trying to work with the states and trying to kind of position and push the states to require this particular product because it's the best one.
Yeah, I went to this festival a few weeks back up in Colorado, and there were police on the ground there, and there was a couple thousand people, but there was a drone that was flying above the festival the whole time. Do you think that kind of technology could be on a drone camera?
So we actually partnered with another company called Asalon Robotics, and they make drones. They also do robotic dogs. They work with Boston Robotics. The company that does the you've probably seen commercials where these cool robots are like jumping up and down off of boxes,
Yeah.
and Boston Dynamics, sorry. And so Asalon is one of our partners, and we actually introduced Asalon to Zero Eyes, and they're now working to integrate so that Asalon's putting that Zero Eyes weapons detection software onto a drone that can hover and pick up, and it works 24/7. The beauty of that technology is that it works on any camera all the time and will notify instantly, whereas other systems, a person has to be looking at the monitor at the time of the event.
Mm.
Well, that means there's only one screen that you can see and only one thing that you can view, and there's just a limit to the person's ability to capture whatever's happening. This works full field 24/7. As long as it's on, it's working and looking for a weapon. And then it will notify actively within 3 to 5 seconds to the dispatch center. So
That's
I would
pretty cool.
imagine, yeah, I don't know that if that drone had it yet, because I think they're still working on the integration. Um, I would think it was certainly somewhat of a deterrent if anybody was thinking about doing anything. So it's probably a good thing to have it up there.
Oh yeah, there's like a little light on it, right? It's
Yeah,
like here I am, I'm watching,
yeah,
don't do anything stupid.
yeah, yeah.
I've
And
heard
we're
of some of the technology for guns where it's like, but it's sound detection, right? So like if a gun fires, they can like triangulate where that gun shot happened from these different like sound, accepting systems. But that's already if the gun's been fired. Yours
correct.
is, before the gunfire happens.
Yeah, that's more of a reactive. It's more to help, like you said, triangulate. So it's where the police can get notified and they know the area that it occurred and they can go there. It's going to be definitely after the fact. It may still improve um, the investigation results. The faster you get there, the better your information. And so that's still another positive thing to have that in place as well. And it's fairly inexpensive. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's another good one to have. We do know that it's probably unrealistic. I'll give you an example. In the city of Kansas City, Missouri, the police have access to about 7,000 cameras. And so to put zero eyes on 7,000 lenses would be pretty expensive for the city. So it's unrealistic to think that every camera is going to have that weapons detection software. The other sort of complication is it's an open carry state, so it's legal to carry a firearm openly.
Mm.
So you'd have a lot of pings and a lot of people, and a lot of dispatch having to determine is this a threat, not a threat. So it's not a great idea, I don't think, to necessarily have it across the board. This isn't like a big brother situation where we're trying to keep eyes on people. It's when you have high risk, high casualty potential, like at a baseball game, at an MLB stadium, 30, 40,000 people in a relatively small area. You've got parking lots surrounding it. That's where you'd want to have this kind of technology so that you can see someone trying to get into where the people are concentrated and you can do something about it before it happens.
What about
We don't
a Super
necessarily,
Bowl parade
yeah,
celebration?
exactly, exactly. Yeah, in fact, that parade led us down the path of working on a mobile platform where we can go and do a perimeter for an event just like that, because that's not at a facility. That was just in the city, in downtown. It was 800,000 people concentrated into a large area or a small area of downtown Kansas City. And so we might have, if we had had the technology available, we could have set up some kind of like a perimeter of weapons detection, and it would have started pinging the minute things started happening and notifying police exactly where it was happening, and then also have a visual on who did it and what they looked like, so that the chaos that happened after the fact, when cops were just everywhere going, where do we go? Who do we chase? I mean, they took down a guy that wasn't involved, and um, he got paraded in front of the city for 2 days where they thought he was the shooter, and turned out he was just a dad that was there with his kids.
My
You know,
gosh.
so you can imagine they would have liked to have had better information so they could, go after the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like an exciting business. And I can only imagine, especially with like the climate, and with the government and, some of these politicians talking about, all the weapons and, banning them and that sort of thing. Like this is like a good compromise, I think, so that we don't infringe on the Second Amendment too much and privacy too much, but give people the ability to have these weapons and use them for what they're supposed to be used for, but also
Yeah.
protect people. Right. I think it's a great thing you guys are working on there. Um,
Well, and Zero Eyes was formed by, it's almost all former Navy SEALs and Army Rangers. So these are guys who have served our country. They recognize and understand those civil liberties, Second Amendment, privacy. They recognize that there's some risk that these things could switch over into being too intrusive for those kinds of rights. And so they're working hard to try to balance that. The way the system works now is it doesn't take constant video, it takes still frames. And so if it picks up a weapon, it sends a still frame. So we don't store the data until it actually activates. Like if it picks up a gun, then it will start to record.
mm,
But the still frames leading up to that, we're not recording people walking around and trying, we're not using that to look at them or dig into anything. It's strictly meant to pick up weapons.
yeah, I love it. Really cool business. I mean, and
Yeah,
again, it's a cash flowing business that you can use to funnel money back to other ventures, whether it's, building your real estate portfolio or going out and, building a larger team to get more properties, right? I mean, you're not flowing money directly to, but there's a way of investing in each other's companies, right? So
right.
it all makes sense on the books.
Yeah.
Um, what one of your guys' main strategies for acquisition and lead generation is foreclosures.
Hmm.
How has that been going? Because I know through like the CARES Act and after COVID, like there was basically nobody getting foreclosed on, and then the gates have started to open up a bit, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. So about it comes in waves and it kind of goes through cycles on that. Quarterly. We've noticed that banks have the number of foreclosures sort of coincides with like quarterly and annual fiscal years. Um, but I'll give you an example. About so February or March of 23, when we started pulling foreclosure data, we were seeing anywhere from 6 to 10 names on the list metro wide, and we're in Kansas City, so it's 2 states. There's really 4 major counties, and we were seeing like maybe a dozen just across the metro, 2 million people, and maybe 12 foreclosures that we could actively look at. And then we've had weeks where we see 12 a day, 3 or 4 times a week getting added to the list. And the list is, anywhere from 60 to 100 properties at all times. Um, and so it's definitely like once the COVID rules kind of dropped off and banks were allowed to foreclose, they definitely started the process. We're also seeing that they are being a little bit strategic. There are some houses that still have a lot of equity. The banks will work very, very hard and diligently to foreclose those. Um,
Hmm.
and the ones that don't have a lot of equity, they are a lot more receptive to the idea of a short sale or something that is a win-win.
Like a loan
We've had to
modification.
learn how to navigate that a little bit.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because banks typically they're just not in the business of owning real estate. But if there's a lot of equity, right, then they're going to be like, well, you know what, we're going to be in the real estate business now, right? Because they can
Yeah,
take that property back, maybe do a little renovation, and then go put it back on the market and still get some money back and recoup the cost. Because I think back like the 2000s, on average, for the price point, it was right around 10 or 12%. It cost a bank to take a property back, which is a big cost. And if it's a $500,000 house.
that was also, yeah, I think at one point I heard when I was in Florida, it was averaging about 60,000 a property. The values are higher. There's some of those swing states, the values are kind of high. So
Yeah.
that doesn't apply here in Kansas City, but in those swing states, yeah, 10-12% on a $500,000 house, you're talking 60 grand that it
Hmm.
costs for them to manage that deal, to take it back at auction, find an agent to come in and do work to it, pay for the work, let it go on market. They usually don't do near enough work, so it doesn't sell quick. They overprice
Hmm.
it every time. And then it just sits and sits and sits until it drops into more of an investor level pricing. And then it usually ends up being an investor who takes it down anyway. Homeowners don't want to buy projects as a rule. You have a few handy homeowners and they'll do their thing, but most people do not want to buy a $30,000 out of pocket project that they got to spend 6 months working on before it's livable.
Yeah.
And so the banks, it's odd to me that the banks, I don't know if we do think there's some incentive for them. I think they do get to write off their losses and then go try to make profit. I think they'd be better off just having investors take these off their hands early, because they're going to end up there anyway.
Yeah. I remember back in like the 2000s before the big downturn. Well, actually, it was more actually after the downturn. People would talk about these tapes
Yeah,
of properties, and it was always like this, like elusive white whale, right? Like
yeah,
everyone talked about it, but I didn't know anybody that ever got one. Have
yeah.
you heard anything about these tapes of properties where you could buy like a big bulk of properties instead of just doing one-offs?
Yeah, it worked for a while until investors started realizing the banks were just they were putting together a tape so that you'd take their 4 worst properties off their hands. Like they'd give you, the tape might have 20 houses on it, and you got to buy the whole thing, but it comes with four, absolute hellholes that you got to just, I mean, you're going to lose money on.
Right.
And so then you're trying to figure out how to make the whole thing work as an investment, but you've got 4 things that might take a lot of heavy lifting. And so, we I did actually work in that a little bit for a guy in Florida looking for that kind of opportunity. And after a while, it just got so difficult. You had to start, you're looking at every single property, and some of these tapes were 100 properties, and they might have
Wow.
30 horrible houses in it. So you're trying to trade, like, do we want 30 horrible ones for 70 decent ones? And in the 70, you might have 10 really good ones, 20 okay ones, and then 40 so-so kind of average, maybe break even type deals. and just hope that the 30 at the bottom were not, you know, going to cost you a fortune.
Right.
Um, so I'm not seeing those come back yet. I've heard a little talk about that, but I think not in Kansas City. I don't think we have enough foreclosures for there to be that many on one bank's portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew a guy, well, I know a guy who had two of those this year already. They were mostly in Florida, in
Hmm.
Georgia. The tapes that he had, and I got a chance to look at one, but they were like, you know, $50 million deals. Like
Yeah,
you needed really deep pockets to be able to do some of these things. Um, but I think they're out there. I don't know if there's going to be more of them coming down the pipe, but it's always interesting to hear about those things. So do you think that foreclosures are going to go up, going to go down? Do you have any sort of like prediction of what's going to happen in that world?
I think, well, as we move to a more normal market, I still don't think we're in a normal market. I mean, I think the market got overheated there for a few years when rates were so low. Um, it's it's correcting now, but it's correcting in a strange way. I think there's the rates went they increased fast. I wouldn't say they're high. They're still, we've been around long enough that 6.5 is not that high. But it feels like that because it's double what it was. And then I think with the election uncertainty, there's just a lot of people kind of sitting on the sidelines right now. A large percentage of the population is aging baby boomer level. As a group, not to be ageist or anything, but as a group, they're just a very patient group. They don't do a whole lot of things, with urgency. And they're not in a hurry. They don't have to sell. A lot of those people, they've worked a long time. They've got pensions. They've got 401ks. They've got situations where they just don't have to move. But that's a big percentage of the population. Um, and then, uh, you know, there's some other factors in the other generations of the other age groups. I think the younger age groups right now are just having a hard time qualifying and getting money. The job market's soft, or I don't know if that's the right word for it. The job market's weird. I will say that. Um, so I still don't think we're in a normal market. It has corrected some from the heated market, but it's not balanced, and there's not enough activity. There's not enough trading. People just aren't
Hmm.
moving. And until we start seeing that trade activity increase, I think foreclosures are probably going to stay kind of where they are. They've definitely increased a lot over the last couple of years. Um, if the market doesn't heat up again, the banks won't have as much incentive to foreclose. And now that we've had enough time go by since COVID, the attorney fees, like the equity's getting chewed up by attorney fees and the balance sort of increasing with the missed payments.
Hmm.
So there for a while, we had a nice little window 18 months ago where foreclosures were starting to pick up and they had equity. But now 18 months later, if they were in foreclosure then and they're still in pre-foreclosure now, all that equity is chewed up by attorney fees. And so like they'll think they only owe 100,000 on a house, and we'll get the final payoff and it'll be 170.
Hmm.
And so where they thought they had some equity and some ability to sell, they don't. And now we're having to negotiate with the bank in a short sale situation to try to get them to reduce the payoff.
Right. So there's some opportunity there, especially with, a skill group like yours to do that negotiation and get that balance down, create a little bit of equity there to where it might make sense. But a lot of those just wouldn't be cash deals, but they might make sense from like a creative angle.
Mhm.
But I guess banks also aren't, in the business of doing any sort of like seller financing. But these are pre-foreclosures still, right? So the homeowner could potentially do something with a carry.
It kind of depends if they've never tried to negotiate with the bank, they have some opportunity. But a lot of these people they're pretty wise and they can look into the Google situation and like figure out how to do a lot of this stuff. And so they'll go and get a modification and then they'll go back into foreclosure again. They'll sometimes get a second modification. All of these things take time and it might be 6, 12, 18 months down the road, they've done 2 or 3 modifications. And now the bank's just going, no, we're done. And
Yeah.
so by that time, now they're calling us because they now need really, they need us to help them. Well, by the time we get there, sometimes the bank's just done and they won't work with us to postpone the sale. I mean, we had one this week that the sale is Tuesday. Today's a Wednesday. The sale is Tuesday next week. We got called yesterday, and we're trying to negotiate with the bank to just postpone it for a week so we can get title work and get everything done that we need to sell to buy the house. And it may be too late. They're just like, nah, we're this far. We're just going to foreclose.
Yeah.
So we can't do much about that. You know, people do need to act quickly and get us involved. We can help, but if they wait till the last week, it's really, really, really difficult.
Right. Yeah, that timeline is a curse and a benefit, right? Because it forces people to make decisions. But if they wait too long, then at some point it's just out of everyone's hands. They can't get anything done because of that deadline looming.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are looking for leads, right? So if anybody here is in the greater Kansas City area, if you got a lead, send it to Todd and Ben. They can help with you. And you guys do JV deals too, right?
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We recently did one in a suburb called Grain Valley. A buddy of mine called and said, hey, I don't have the lending capacity right now to get something to get this one done. And it was a higher priced home. And he introduced us to the homeowner and helped us negotiate that deal. We got a good deal, and he's getting a 15% of our profit here in about 30 days. And in that situation, he's getting about 14 grand. So we're
That's
happy
awesome.
to team up with people. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Todd, thanks so much for taking the time to like share your background and talk about, some of the way you run your companies and have grown. If anybody wants to work with Crown City Homes or Stonemont Security, maybe some people have heard that and that's piquing their interest, and the ability to use Zero Eyes or you guys' threat assessment consultation. How can they reach you?
Honestly, we're pretty fairly small shop, so call in direct, email directly. My email's todd@crowncitykc.com. And then we also have Ben Allgaier, he's pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. He's actually pretty easy to find on social. He's got a pretty good following and presence on there. Reaching out to Ben Allgaier through Facebook or Instagram. You can call me direct. I'm happy to leave my number if you want to put that out there. They can reach out to me direct.
Yeah, if you don't mind, it's up to you.
I'll say go ahead. It's 816-214-3044, and happy to take a call and see how we can do something.
Awesome. So you guys, if you're looking for some really like upstanding people out in the Kansas City market who you can do business with, like I couldn't recommend a better group of guys than Todd and Ben. So reach out to them, connect. And Todd, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you taking the time, and looking forward to seeing you next time. And for everybody out there, thanks for listening to the REI Hacker Podcast. Keep an eye out for more really cool segments with people like Todd who are doing really cool stuff in real estate investing and business acquisitions and entrepreneurship. And so make sure you like and share this episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Benson.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.